Eagles Nation, the reality heading into this Week 17 matchup is that this is not just another late-season game on the schedule. This is the kind of game that exposes exactly who you are as a football team when January is right around the corner. Philadelphia is walking into Highmark Stadium, knowing the stakes go beyond a win or a loss. Kickoff is set for 4:25 p.m. Eastern. The Eagles are underdogs, and the environment is exactly what you expect in Buffalo at this time of year. Cold, wind, rain that could turn into snow, and conditions that will force both teams to rely on toughness, discipline, and execution rather than comfort. That context matters because this Eagles team is built on the belief that conditions should never be an excuse. If you feel this energy, this sense of decision, let it overflow in the comments. Show that the fan base understands what's at stake here. And if you trust our GM Howie Roseman, hit the like button on the video. That strengthens the channel. And drop this in the comments just like this. Go Eagles, I believe, because this matchup has the feel of a playoff rehearsal. When the 2025 season began, many people around the league circled Philadelphia and Buffalo as potential Super Bowl 60 representatives. That is not hype created this week. That has been the perception for months. Now both teams get a chance to measure themselves against another true contender before the postseason begins. For the Eagles, this game comes at the perfect time. The defense needs a real test after facing backup quarterbacks in recent weeks, and the offense is still in the process of refining its identity under Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo as the season tightens. Weather will shape the flow of this game, and that favors a team that embraces physical football. Philadelphia is comfortable playing in adverse conditions. They deal with it at home, they have dealt with it on the road, and they have already played multiple games this season where wind and cold dictated how the game had to be played. That mentality shows up in the way this roster talks about itself. This team believes in winning at the line of scrimmage, leaning on the offensive line, and wearing opponents down. That belief is not new. Since the early 2000s, the Eagles have been one of the most consistently successful organizations in football, and that foundation still defines them today. There is also recent history between these two teams that adds another layer. The last time the Eagles and Bills met, in Week 12 of the 2023 season, it was an instant classic. Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen traded blows in a game that went to overtime, with Philadelphia winning 37-34 at Lincoln Financial Field in Kelly Green. Hurts accounted for 5 total touchdowns. Allen was just as electric, and the quarterbacks combined for 9 touchdowns. That game represented the high point of the Eagles' 2023 season before everything unraveled late. It matters now because both teams have evolved since then, but the core challenge remains the same. Can you match physicality, composure, and execution when everything is on the line? Josh Allen is the central problem Buffalo presents. He does everything for that offense. He can attack all areas of the field, extend plays when protection breaks down, and punish defenses with his legs. Buffalo has leaned into that reality, and while they have good players around him, this team goes as far as Allen takes them. That puts immense pressure on the Eagles' defense, which is exactly why this matchup is valuable heading into the playoffs. Containment, discipline, and finishing tackles will be essential, especially in weather that could create broken plays and chaos. On the Eagles' side, there are significant personnel storylines that directly impact how this game should be approached. Lane Johnson is expected to play, and his presence fundamentally changes what the offense can do. The numbers tell the story clearly. With Lane Johnson on the field, this franchise wins at an entirely different rate than when he is out. He remains one of the most important players in team history, and his ability to protect Jalen Hurts and anchor the right side of the line is irreplaceable. Jalen Carter is also set to play, despite dealing with shoulder issues throughout the season. His impact on the interior defensive line cannot be overstated.
Even when he is not fully healthy, he commands attention and disrupts opposing offenses in ways that do not always show up in the box score. There are injury concerns, but the tone coming out of the building is confidence. Nakobe Dean's hamstring injury is not considered serious, and there is optimism he will continue to be part of the defensive rotation. That matters because his growth alongside Zach Bond has added speed and versatility to the second level of the defense. The Eagles believe they are still getting better, and that belief is driving a larger conversation this week about whether starters should play in a game like this. Nick Sirianni has made it clear that improvement matters more than comfort. The Eagles cannot earn the number 1 seed, but the number 2 seed is still in play, and that has real value. Philadelphia has been extremely difficult to beat at home in the playoffs, and that is not something this coaching staff is willing to take lightly. The message is simple. If there is something to gain, you go get it. That philosophy explains why the expectation is that the starters will be on the field in Buffalo, despite the risks. This game is about sharpening habits. It is about seeing whether the offensive progress of the last few weeks holds up against a quality opponent. It is about testing the defense against one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in football. It is about embracing uncomfortable conditions and proving that physical football still wins when things get ugly. The Eagles are not approaching this as a game to survive. They are treating it as a game to learn from, a game to push themselves, and a game that could define how prepared they are when the playoffs begin. From your perspective as a fan, this is the kind of matchup you want before January. It forces clarity, it exposes weaknesses, it confirms strengths, and it tells you whether this team is truly ready to make another deep run. So as you look at this Eagles team heading into Buffalo, with the weather, the injuries, the seeding implications, and the quality of the opponent all factored in, how do you feel about the decision to play the starters and chase momentum instead of playing it safe? The conversation naturally shifts to how this game will actually be decided on the field, because once the ball is kicked, philosophy gives way to execution. Everything about this matchup points to details, margins, and discipline. Buffalo's offense is explosive, but it is also heavily dependent on Josh Allen creating solutions when structure breaks down. That reality puts an enormous burden on the Eagles' defense to stay patient. Pass rush lanes cannot collapse recklessly. Containment matters just as much as pressure. One missed assignment or one defender getting too aggressive can turn a routine play into a backbreaking scramble or a deep shot downfield. This is where Vic Fangio's approach becomes critical, because his defenses are built on forcing quarterbacks to be precise, not heroic. Philadelphia's defense has already shown this season that it can limit elite, mobile quarterbacks when it stays true to its principles. That does not mean Josh Allen will be shut down. No defense does that consistently. It means forcing Buffalo to earn everything, snap by snap, especially in poor weather where mistakes are magnified. Red zone defense becomes even more important in these conditions, and that has quietly been one of the Eagles' strengths. Holding opponents to field goals instead of touchdowns is how games like this swing. On the other side of the ball, the biggest storyline is the continued evolution of the Eagles' offense. Over the last few games, the approach has looked more intentional and more connected. Jalen Hurts operating under center has opened up the play-action game. Motion before the snap has helped identify coverage and create leverage. Inside zone runs have replaced concepts that were not matching the personnel. This is not about reinventing the offense in December. It is about leaning into what works and what reflects the identity of the team. The run game is central to that identity. Philadelphia has rediscovered its ability to control games on the ground, and the timing of that resurgence matters. Buffalo has shown vulnerability against the run, especially when key defenders are missing or limited. In whether that favors physical football, the Eagles should have opportunities to impose themselves. Sustained drives not only wear down the defense, they also keep Josh Allen on the sideline, which is often the most effective defensive strategy against him. There's also a very real special team storyline that cannot be ignored. Games like this are often decided by one kick. Jake Elliott's season has been uneven, and that reality adds tension to every close contest. The coaching staff has made its stance clear. There's confidence in his track record, especially in the postseason, but confidence does not erase pressure. Every field goal attempt, every extra point, could swing momentum in a game where points are expected to be at a premium. How Elliott responds in this environment is part of the evaluation heading into January. Another layer that deserves attention is the matchup between the Eagles linebackers and Buffalo's tight ends. The Bills rely heavily on Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox to create mismatches, especially when defenses focus too much on Allen outside the pocket. Communication, leverage, and tackling will matter here. Giving up easy completions over the middle can keep Buffalo on schedule and neutralize the pass rush. This is one of those subtle battles that does not dominate headlines but often determines who controls the tempo. What makes this game compelling from a Philadelphia perspective is that it checks every box you want before the playoffs. A hostile road environment, bad weather, an elite quarterback, seeding implications, injury management decisions, tactical discipline, mental toughness. None of this is theoretical. This is as close to playoff football as you get without the bracket attached to it. The Eagles are not approaching this game thinking about avoiding mistakes. They are approaching it thinking about proving readiness. That mindset tells you a lot about where this team believes it is. They understand the risks. They understand the physical toll, but they also understand that confidence built against quality opponents carries into January in a way that rest alone never can. This is not about style points. It is about habits. How they line up, how they communicate, how they respond when something goes wrong, how they finish. Buffalo will test all of that. And regardless of the final score, the performance will reveal truths that matter far beyond one Sunday afternoon. What cannot be overlooked is how much this game functions as a measuring stick for leadership and composure, especially from the core of this roster. Late December football against a top AFC opponent on the road is when decision-making speed, emotional control, and situational awareness separate teams that simply reach the playoffs from teams that are built to survive them. For Philadelphia, this is not about proving anything to the league. It is about confirming internally that the standard they believe in still holds under maximum stress. Jalen Hurts sits at the center of that conversation. His recent stretch of clean football has been one of the most encouraging developments for this offense. Ball security, timing, and efficiency have replaced some of the forced plays that showed up earlier in the season. Against Buffalo, especially in wind and cold, the margin for error shrinks even further. This is a game where taking what the defense gives you is not a sign of conservatism, but maturity. Sustaining drives, flipping field position, and trusting the structure of the offense all matter more than explosive moments that carry unnecessary risk. This is also where the offensive line's health becomes critical. With Lane Johnson back, the protection schemes stabilize, the run game becomes more consistent, and the entire offense operates with more confidence. It is not a coincidence that the Eagles' offensive efficiency historically spikes when Johnson is on the field. His presence allows the coaching staff to call the game without constantly compensating for weaknesses up front. Against a Bills defense that is aggressive but not dominant, that stability could quietly tilt the game. Defensively, the mental test is just as demanding. Josh Allen thrives on extending plays and punishing hesitation. The Eagles must be willing to accept that some plays will go for short gains if it means preventing catastrophic breakdowns. Discipline is not passive. It is active restraint, keeping eyes where they belong, communicating through motion, and trusting help inside are the kinds of details that do not show up in highlight reels but win games like this. Another subtle element is fatigue management. This game will be physical, especially in the trenches. Rotations on the defensive line, snap management for veterans, and situational awareness late in halves all factor into how fresh this team looks if the game comes down to the final minutes. Philadelphia's depth has been a strength, but depth only matters if it is used intelligently. What emerges from all of this is a clear picture of why the Eagles are treating this matchup as necessary, not optional. They are not chasing momentum for the sake of narrative. They are sharpening edges that only get tested in environments like this. Win or lose, the way they handle Buffalo will influence how they prepare, how they practice, and how they approach the postseason mentally. This is the kind of game that tells you whether a team trusts its identity or abandons it when conditions are uncomfortable. Philadelphia believes its identity travels. Sunday is about proving that belief is justified. One more layer that deserves attention is how games like this recalibrate expectations inside the locker room. When you face an opponent that can punish every lapse, you are forced to confront your weak points honestly. That is often more valuable than a comfortable win against a lesser team. Philadelphia's coaching staff understands that, and players feel it as well. This is where habits either harden or crack. Communication on the sideline, adjustments between series, body language after a negative play. All of it becomes magnified when the environment is hostile and the opponent is capable of taking control quickly. This is also where veterans earn their value. Players who have been through playoff runs, Super Bowls, and late-season adversity know how to steady a team when momentum swings. You cannot script that. You can only experience it. This game gives the Eagles another opportunity to lean on that experience and see how younger contributors respond alongside it. Those responses matter when rotations tighten in January and every snap carries weight. Offensively, patience will be tested. There may be stretches where the run game grinds but does not explode. There may be drives where field position matters more than points. Accepting that reality without forcing the issue is a sign of a team that trusts itself. The Eagles have shown growth in that area recently, and this matchup will reveal whether that growth is real or situational. Defensively, the challenge is resisting frustration. Josh Allen will make plays. He always does. The danger is letting one broken play turn into a series of them, resetting after each snap, treating every down as independent, and trusting the collective rather than chasing individual hero moments is essential. That mindset aligns directly with how this defense wants to operate. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, this game is not about Buffalo alone. It is about Philadelphia proving that its process works against anyone, anywhere, under any conditions. That belief is what carries teams through the unpredictability of the postseason. Comfort disappears in January. Only preparation remains. This is why the Eagles are not approaching this week cautiously. They are leaning into it. They want the answers that only a game like this can provide. They want to see where they stand, not where they hope to be. There's also something important about how moments like this shape belief, not just confidence. Confidence can fluctuate week to week. Belief is deeper. Belief is what shows up when a drive stalls, when the weather turns worse, when the crowd gets louder, and when the margin for error disappears. This Eagles team is clearly chasing that belief, the kind that does not depend on perfect conditions or early leads. Buffalo presents a scenario where belief has to be earned in real time. You can already sense that this roster understands the opportunity. This is not framed internally as a trap game or a game to simply get through healthy. It is framed as a chance to validate progress. That matters because the postseason does not allow gradual learning curves. Whatever version of yourself you bring into January is the version you live with. Philadelphia is trying to arrive there sharpened, not sheltered. Another overlooked element is how this game reinforces accountability. When starters play, when expectations are high, and when the opponent is respected, there is nowhere to hide. Every rep is evaluated honestly. That accountability carries into practice the following week. It affects preparation. It affects urgency. It tightens standards. Those are the invisible gains that often separate teams that peak at the right time from teams that slowly fade. From a fan perspective, this is also why games like this are worth watching closely, even beyond the final score. Watch how quickly adjustments happen. Watch how the offense responds after a 3-and-out. Watch how the defense reacts after giving up a big play. Watch the sideline energy. Those clues tell you more about postseason staying power than any standings graphic ever will. Philadelphia has spent years building a reputation as a team that does not flinch. That reputation was earned through moments like this, not declarations. Buffalo will push them. The conditions will test them. The pressure will expose truths. And that is exactly why this game matters so much in the larger story of the season. Whatever happens on the scoreboard, the answers that come out of this matchup will echo into January. That is what makes this stretch of football meaningful. That is why the Eagles are leaning forward instead of pulling back. And that is why this team believes it is still building towards something bigger. From a fan perspective, this is also why games like this are worth watching closely, even beyond the final score. Watch how quickly